Hey there, Blazer fans, and welcome to episode 10 of The Dragon's Den, a podcast for those that bleed green and gold. Today, I have a legend in not only UAB athletics history, but also the Birmingham media and broadcasting industry. I'm talking about Mr. Derek Scudder. Derek has been with UAB athletics for 35 years as a PA announcer, and he can also be heard at Birmingham Barons games. I think you guys are really going to enjoy some of Derek's stories. I know I did. So let's get into it. Thanks for listening.
All right, Blazer fans, it's time for the 10th episode. I've got my 11th guest on the Dragon's Den podcast, Mr. Derek Scudder. You all know him from, you can hear his amazing voice at all the sporting events at the UAB basketball games and the UAB football games, and even for your Birmingham Barons here. He's been with the UAB basketball for 35 years. He's been the PA announcer for UAB football since the club football days in the late 80s and early 90s. And he's been the PA announcer for the Birmingham Barons for quite a while now, and he also had a 45-year career in TV and radio broadcasting in the Birmingham area, and he just retired back in July. So, Derek, how you doing tonight?
Doing good. Well, good to talk to you.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure uh, getting to know my guest a little bit, and it's especially great getting to know you because growing up, it's been you're kind of a childhood idol of mine a little bit in a way because growing up I'd go out and onto the basketball court that I had in my driveway, my basketball hoop, and every time I'd run out on the driveway I'd always go, Birmingham on your feet, here come your UAB Blazers. And it was always fun doing that. And it's just great getting to know you a little bit more, and I know my listeners are going to enjoy getting to know you too.
Well, I'm proud to be on tonight.
So, just getting to know you a little bit better. Derek, your Facebook page says you're from Kentucky. So, what got you to Birmingham?
A radio job getting out of southeastern Kentucky. I was working at a little station there and decided that just needed something different and wanted to do something bigger, and always dreamed of working in a bigger city. I ended up in Birmingham a couple years after I left Kentucky after a short stay in Fort Payne. But I got to work at WVOK, and that's actually where I got hooked up with UAB. The coaches show with Gene Bartow and Gary Sanders was on WVOK in the evenings, and that was right after my afternoon show. So as I was winding things down, Coach and Gary would always be gathered into the studio. That as soon as my show was over at 6 o'clock, they would kind of get things together, and then the coaches show would come on. So I got to know Gary and Coach Bartow, and then Tim Roy was doing an afternoon sports show a little bit later, and he got me hooked up with UAB. Tim is now the play-by-play guy for the Golden State Warriors. He's been with them for a better part of about 25 years, so he really kind of got me hooked up doing public address.
Okay. So, did you feel that you had a gift for broadcasting? You had a great voice for it, and that's what made you start, or did it evolve, over time from experience?
It's the only job I ever had. I was in high school. A friend of mine worked at the local radio station, and the station was just like a block away from my house up in Corbin, Kentucky. And so I would kind of hang out with him after school. And then I kind of got a part-time job working the Cincinnati Reds and Cincinnati Bengals games, just running the board for sticking the local commercials in. And then finally worked my way into a DJ job, and that was I started in 1975, and then I just retired from television back in July. So that's a long time on the air, and really, all that time, that's pretty much the only job I've ever had, talking into a microphone.
Okay. So Blazer fans, on your typical game day, we get to hear that great voice of yours, getting us revved up for the game. But we don't typically get to see the man behind the curtain, I guess, in a way that, what's your typical game day like in terms of prep and during the game?
Prep, the only thing I really try to get there in plenty of time, especially football is a little bit more involved because we have a longer pregame show than basketball. But I like to get parked and just get in and settled and go over pronunciations. That's the most important thing. Check out the opposing team's pronunciation guide. any questions I have, anything I need to look forward to, as far as somebody a surprise name that I thought I knew how to pronounce, and all of a sudden it's pronounced differently. Because that's the most important thing. A person's name is their most prized possession. You want to get that right, because you never know, they got friends and family in the stands, and you want to get that right. So just pronunciation guides. I like to get that taken care of. Get settled, look over the script, make sure I have a clue as to what's going on, and just get settled in and just be prepared.
Gotcha. Okay. So you've been around UAB basketball and UAB sports in general for a long time now, and you've developed a fandom since you've been here. And I've seen you on a couple of road trips before. So what's been your favorite road game that you've attended for UAB?
Got to still be the football game in 2000 down in LSU. Got to go with a crew of my friends. We made a road trip down there to New Orleans, and then took the drive over to Baton Rouge and had a big time. Lots of Blazer fans were down there, and that was a special night. We'll never forget that. We got some great pictures too from that night as well. Also made the trip over to Starkville when we beat Mississippi State. I got to be there for that game. For the football games, those were a lot of fun. Basketball road trips back when we were in the same conference as Tulane. I'm a New Orleans Saints season ticket holder, so sometimes basketball and football seasons would overlap, and we'd have a game down in Tulane. So we got to see some games down there at Old Fogelman Arena. That was fun, and also got to see a big game with UAB and Mississippi State over in Starkville at the Hump when Mo Finley went off and had a huge game, and we got beat at the last second of that one. That was a tough one, but that was a good trip over to Mississippi State. A big football win and a close basketball loss. So those are some road games. I get to cheer. I get to make some noise as a fan. But when I'm doing the PA thing, I have to kind of keep reserved. I can get excited, but I can't really yell and holler. So it's a good road trips are a good chance to get loud.
That's awesome. And I was, believe it or not, I was there with you on a lot of those games, on the LSU trip. But that was my first road trip ever as a UAB fan. But I was barely 5 years old, and I was there for those Mississippi State trips, and those were both very fun. So I know that you were excited to be away from the microphone for a little bit, so you can kind of scream and yell and get some of those frustrations out. As you didn't have to be sitting there and be all calm.
Get to holler at the officials for a change. That's nice.
Yeah. So, like I said, you have developed a fandom for UAB, and as a PA announcer, we've talked about it a little bit. It is hard to be calm and collected, but what were some of the hardest games you ever had to call for as a PA announcer, either due to technical issues or due to a heartbreaking loss?
Well, a heartbreaking loss would definitely the one that comes to mind is the Memphis game right after Coach Bartow had died, and it just so happens that I was not going to be able to work the game on that weekend anyhow. So I had already made arrangements to be off, but then Coach Bartow had died early in the weekend. It just so happened that the next game was be the Memphis game, and it turned out I was actually very happy that I wasn't going to be there because I don't know if I could have done that one. Matt Coulter, who had been doing radio, stepped in and he did the public address for that game, I believe. Technical issues we had when I was doing the Barons game when we were at the Hoover Met and we hosted the first Southern League All Star game there. This has been 15 some years ago. The sound system went out about a half hour before the game, and we were having to make some arrangements. So somebody was pulling up big speakers. They had a DJ booth, and they were pulling big speakers up and sitting them in the windows and bringing up amplifiers and trying to put something together just so we'd have some sort of a public address system. And we had like 6,000-7,000 people in the house for the All Star game, but literally minutes before the first pitch, they got the public address system back on, so we didn't have to do that. But there was a lot of scrambling going on. So as far as technical issues, that's probably one of the biggest deals right there. But we've been lucky, even at Legion Field, with all the problems that we have there. We still managed to get something out over the speakers.
Gotcha. We talked about how you've been here for a while. Who was the most electric football player you ever saw during your time doing PA?
As far as Blazer players, I hope that's who you're talking about. Roddy White was a lot of fun. Never forget some of the plays that he and Daryl Hackney made. That was a great combination. I wish Daryl had a longer post college career because he could really sling the football. Him and Roddy getting together. Joe Webb was a lot of fun to watch. Can't forget that. We've had a lot of players, but probably Roddy White, even though he went to the Falcons, had a big career there. He was a lot of fun to watch.
Okay. And what about basketball?
Basketball, we've had some good ones too. Squeaky Johnson was such a lot of fun to watch. Mo Finley, Aaron Johnson. We've had some great guards. Steve Mitchell was so smooth to watch, and then Andy Kennedy, just watching him fire up those threes when he was playing. So I got to watch all of those close up. And then we've had some big guys. Jerome Mincy. I'll never forget back in the late '80s when everybody had the short shorts. Jerome was one of the first players to wear the long basketball shorts, and he looked so different then and now. Everybody was wearing those nowadays. So Jerome was ahead of his time, but yeah, we've had some hot shooting guards, and that's been a lot of fun to watch over the years.
That's awesome. So we've talked about it a little bit with your time at the Hoover Met and um, Legion Field and Bartow Arena, of course. But what has been your favorite venue that you've done PA in?
Well, I have to start with the Superdome back when the Saints the home field for the Saints. I've been there for a lot of Saints games, but when UAB played in the New Orleans Bowl last year, I do public address for the band as well, and I was lucky enough to have the band let me do their announcement for their performance last bowl game at the halftime show. So I got to announce at the Superdome. So that was a lot of fun. When the football team was off, the band did a lot of performances, and I got to follow them. We went up to Indianapolis, and they did a performance at the Lucas Oil Stadium where the Colts play up in Indianapolis. So that was a lot of fun announcing up there as well. So those two pretty much high on the list.
Okay, that's awesome. And I know that's doing PA at the Superdome would probably be a bucket list item for. I know for me it would at least, but for you being a Saints fan, I know that was truly a special moment for you.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy. I really enjoyed it.
So we've talked about some bigger names that you've called for, but outside of UAB, maybe who are some of the bigger names that that have played in games that you've announced for?
We got to start with basketball. Back when we played Memphis, we were in the same conference as then. Penny Hardaway was. I mean, he wore us out, but he was a lot of fun to watch on the basketball court. Back in the Great Midwest days, when Nick Van Exel and Kenyon Martin were playing with Cincinnati, we got to see them play. Let's see, who are some of the other ones? Well, Rick Pitino was coach of Louisville. He was always interesting to be around. Bobby Huggins, when he was coach at Cincinnati, we had some great coaches and that was the other thing I miss about not being on the court side and now being up on the concourse level is being able to hear the coaches and hear them carry on. We've had a lot of coaches come through. Nolan Richardson with Arkansas when we played them one year. So we've had some big names come through Bartow Arena.
What are some of the bigger names from the Barons that you've seen? I know you said that you might have seen one specific NBA all-time legend. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was there for the Michael Jordan year. That was a pretty crazy year. I'll just tell you that the stands were packed every night. The most fun about the Michael Jordan games though was Charles Barkley would come by a lot. He and Jordan were buddies, and Barkley would sit up in the owner's box at the Hoover Met. It's right, they're right next to the press box level, and he would sit in there in the box, and they would give him a box of baseballs, and Barkley would sign baseballs and just toss them into the crowd while he was sitting there watching the game. So there's a lot of people around Birmingham who have Charles Barkley autographed baseballs, which is going to be a unique collectible to have.
That's awesome. Um,
Frank
so
Thomas was also. I got to see him play when he was with the Barons, and he still has the biggest home run I've ever seen hit at the Hoover Met. One shot that Thomas hit a rising line drive over the speaker in dead center field, and it was when it left the park, it was still on the rise, and that is a shot. I don't know if you've been to the Met and really paid attention to how far away that is, but that is a long, long way.
I can only imagine. I've been to the Met, but I mean that's something it seems like you got to see to believe.
Yeah,
That's
you really got to
crazy.
see Frank Thomas too. When he just came out of Auburn and joined the Barons, that is a big man, and he was still young then. That's a big guy.
So we've talked about it a little bit here, but you've been in broadcasting and PA and all of that for a long time now. But who have been your biggest influences in your career?
As far as my broadcasting career, um, I did some play by play back in my early days, and um, some football and some basketball and some baseball, but mostly basketball and football. I grew up listening to Kaywood Ledford, who did Kentucky basketball and football back in the '70s. He was such a great way to do it. And then Gary Sanders, when I came to Birmingham, I really enjoyed the way that he calls the game. And both of those guys really were homers, and they made no bones about it. This is who, I'm calling the game for this team. This is my team. Uh, I'm pulling for them, and they taught me it was okay to be a homer. And I thought that's a good way to do it. Don't try to be. We're not doing national broadcast here. We're not supposed to be on the fence. We're calling for the home team. So let's cheer for the home team. So I always thought that was a good thing, and styled my broadcasts after that.
Okay. You've been at UAB, like we said, since 35 years in basketball, long time with the UAB football program since the club football days. What can you say about the growth of the UAB since you started at UAB?
Well, just the growth of the campus. I mean, it's huge now. When I first started, it was still a commuter school. Let's face it. Back in the late '80s, they had what, maybe 2 3 dorms. I mean, I don't know. I was never a student at UAB and hanging around the campus, but there weren't a whole lot of facilities. You had the hospital and then a few buildings around that, but now just all of the facilities, not only of the athletic facilities, but all the way up and down University Boulevard, and then so many uh, blocks away. I mean, from 10th Avenue all the way up to Regions Field now, it's almost all UAB. And then from 12th all the way past 20th Street. I remember when the administration building now was still a bank, and then now that the administration building has taken over that whole facility out on 20th Street. So just the growth of the campus itself, and then the number of students, it's just been amazing to watch over the past 30 plus years.
That's great. And I was a student at UAB from I transferred to UAB in 2015 and graduated in 2018. So and growing up, I grew up in Montgomery, but even still, like I can attest to that too. I've seen the campus grow from just a few buildings from what I could see growing up, but I know that the Hill Center has changed so much, and I remember back when it was like the old brick, and now it's all glass and everything. It's all shiny and new, and they've got all these new dorms and everything. So it's great to see as an alum and as a longtime fan. I'm glad about the growth of the university, and I know you are too. And I know it's going to hopefully pay dividends for our athletic program and for our campus overall, because I know that our enrollment is going up a lot. So it's been all around great for the university. So
Yeah, I remember when they were building Bartow Arena. That was wild to watch that, because that used to be just another parking area or another building. I don't really remember. There was just something there, and I remember there was this huge hole in the ground. It was just, my goodness, this is where it's going to be. And they had talked about it when we were still playing at the Coliseum, that wouldn't it be nice to have a more intimate facility on campus, and all of a sudden we had it. It was great when I saw the steel going up and the concrete being poured. That was a real big deal when we moved into the arena. 1988, Vanderbilt, first game. That was a lot of fun.
so we talked about your broadcasting career for you were in it for 45 years, and now you're still doing PA. But what keeps you going in the PA business and in media?
Well, it's a lot of fun. I mean, I get the best seat in the house for the most part. Basketball, especially courtside, and then it just keeps me involved in the game. It gives me something to do. I'm not doing it for the money. We're really, you'd be surprised how little we get paid for that. But it's a lot of fun. I mean, like I say, I'm involved in the games. I get to watch a lot of sports, and it's just a lot of fun. It's a way to keep involved with something. I was never much of an athlete, but I get to talk about the games and be a part of the action without having to deal with all the hard part about getting hit and things.
That's nice. And we've talked about it a little bit. You mentioned you're a New Orleans Saints fan, and you've been on a couple of road trips and stuff. But what do you like to do in your spare time away from the PA announcing?
We love live music. My wife and I really like to go to concerts, to clubs, and different places. We've developed a friendship with a lot of folks out in Texas and Oklahoma. They have a great music scene out there, and we like to take road trips out there and see some friends. We like to go to music festivals during the summer, and we just like to go see live music. A lot of great places in town to see music as well. So we like to go out and catch a band.
Nice. So I've got a few questions from my listeners on social media. Normally, I would only ask one or two, but uh, when I announced that you were going to be my next guest, I got a really good response. So I got a lot of questions. So my first question I got from Bearden at DMBJ88 on Twitter. He asks, "What's your favorite UAB basketball team that you have announced for in Bartow Arena?"
Got to be a couple of them, and one of them was one of the first teams at Bartow Arena when we opened up in '88. The next season, the '89-90 team was Andy Kennedy was probably a junior that year, I guess. Stanley Jackson was on that team. Barry Bearden, Jack Kramer was a lot of fun to watch. Elbert Rogers, the Dancing Bear, George Wilkerson. No, Larry Rembert was the dancing bear, not Elbert. Alan Ogg was on that team. That was a great team. That was the team that played Arkansas with Nolan Richardson at Bartow Arena. Should have won that game, but we had some questionable officiating. We'll just call that. And Coach Bartow was not happy with that game. He was also very unhappy at the Sun Belt tournament. We won the regular season. We hosted the Sun Belt tournament, and that was at the Coliseum that year. And D. Brown from Jacksonville, who went on to have a pretty good NBA career, just went off on that tournament. And we had some questionable calls in our semifinal game that bounced us out of the tournament. And Gene Bartow let the Sun Belt Conference know what he thought about their officials in that tournament. And then had we won that tournament, we would have gotten a really good seed in the NCAA tournament, but instead we got seeded a little bit lower, and UCLA had a pretty good team that year, and we got bounced by them in the first round. So that '89-90 team was a lot of fun. And then, of course, the 2003 team, who can forget them? Mo Finley, his senior year, with Ronell and Donnell Taylor. Demario Edens was such a great player in that team. Squeaky was on that team. Sidney Ball, who's still with the team on the staff. That team was a lot of fun. That was the team that we went to Mississippi State and saw them, but they got into the tournament, took care of Washington. Nate Robinson was the guard on that team. Nate always liked to run his mouth. I remember them talking before the game about how they were going to run us out of the gym, and then we took care of them. Nate most recently lost that fight on the same night as Mike Tyson. A lot of folks remember him face down. We took care of him that night, and then that team is the one that went on to beat Kentucky, bounced them when they were the number one seed in the tournament, and then we ended up against Kansas in St. Louis. I was at that game. That was a good road trip, but the outcome wasn't near as fun. But those two teams probably the best basketball teams that I remember ever seeing from UAB at Bartow Arena.
Okay. And my next question I've got is from Jana at JanaMan _ on Twitter. She asks, which teams get you most excited to announce for? Football, basketball, or baseball? And what is your favorite part of game day?
They all have their different aspects. Basketball being courtside was always a lot of fun. Like I said, I got to hear the coaches a lot to hear their different style of coaching, and to hear the stuff down on the court that a lot of folks in the stands don't get to hear. Football, I get to. I'm so high up in the press box at Legion Field, I don't get intimate. I'm not down. I really can't hear the game at all because I'm in a glass box. So there's no open window. So that's kind of tough. And but it's just a lot of fun to see the panorama of the Legion Field with the crowd, and plus where I am so high up in the press box, I get to look out over the top and see the city skyline and the campus and Red Mountain with Vulcan up on the top. So that's always pretty cool. And then baseball, for UAB baseball with Young Field, I'm right there on top of the field. It's such a an intimate facility, and then at Regions Field, which is really really nice baseball park. Get to see on top, and it's just a lot of fun to call a ball game at that place. So each sport has its own unique aspects of it. So I really can't say I like one more than the other. And my favorite part is when we win. The home team wins a big game, a tournament. I got to call the last time the Barons won the Southern League was the first year at Regions Field, and we actually got to win the pennant at the park, and I was the PA announcer for that. So that was a lot of fun. Kind of like when UAB won the Conference USA tournament at the Coliseum, and I was the PA announcer for that. You can't beat winning like that with the home team at home.
I agree. That's great. So my next question I've got is from Blazin at MJG Boss on Twitter. He asks, "What is your favorite Birmingham sports moment?"
Favorite Birmingham sports moment. Well, aside from winning the tournaments and the championships that we talked about, I've got to go back to a football game in 1999, and this has always been my favorite UAB football story. It was a year that Watson Brown, was trying to get the team together. Was still kind of struggling along, and UAB would win some, lose some, and hadn't really done anything major. And East Carolina came into town, and this was the first time I think that they'd been ranked, or at least ranked in a long time. And Coach Brown had talked about all week that this is going to be the UAB score is going to be on televisions across the country. That ticker at the bottom has got the top 25 teams. East Carolina is going to be on there, so that our game, which was an afternoon game, that score is going to be up there all the time, so people are going to see what UAB is doing. And sure enough, we were fighting with them, and we had a defensive back named Rodriguez Brooks. Who went on to have just a little cup of coffee in the NFL. But that afternoon against East Carolina, he had a tough play where he got involved in a tackle and got hit and was down. And they had to bring out the cart and carried him off on a stretcher. It really, really looked bad. And then in the second half, some members of the of the UAB official party came up to talk to his mom. Rodriguez Brooks' mom was in the stands, and she left with them, and that's never a good sign. And then shortly after, here comes Rodriguez Brooks running onto the field in the jersey that his mother was wearing. What had happened is when he got to the hospital, they carried him off in a neck brace, so they had to cut his jersey off to check him out and everything. Turned out it was like a stinger. It was just a momentary nerve thing, and it cleared up, and they cleared him to come back, so he didn't have a jersey. So his mom had his jersey from the year before. So they got the jersey from her, put it on Rodriguez. He came back in the game, intercepted a pass, returns it 91 yards for a touchdown. UAB comes on to win the game against a ranked East Carolina squad. The score is all over, the nation. We beat a top 25 team. Maybe our first win over a top 25 school. I don't remember, but that was such a great moment. I love that story about Rodriguez Brooks coming back in the game wearing the jersey that his mama was wearing.
um, This next question will come from somebody that you actually PA announced for, a recent guest on my show and a recent UAB football member, Lee Dufour, at Lee_Dufour on Twitter. He asks, how excited are you to be moving to the Protective Stadium next fall?
I'll tell you, have you been by there lately? That place looks fantastic. I mean, it's right downtown. It's right next to the interstate. Anybody driving through Birmingham is going to see it. It's just, it looks so cool. I've been following it for months on the webcam that they have there. The facility is going to be so great. A lot of folks are not really excited about the lack of parking, and I can tell you most facilities around the country ain't a lot of parking. They require you to take mass transit, come to the park that way, and I'm sure we'll learn to adapt. Once you get in, it's going to be so nice. It's going to be run by the Civic Center. While it's owned by the city, technically it's not going to be staffed by the city, and that's a lot of things that people don't understand about Legion Field. Legion Field on game day is staffed for the most part by city employees as a part-time job. I mean, the Legion Field doesn't have a big full-time staff that works events. They pick up folks that work for the city and some friends and family that come in, and they sign up and they do the part-time jobs around there. But at the Protective Stadium, that's going to be staffed by Civic Center employees. These are people who work the Coliseum and the exhibition halls. These are professionals in their fields, professional sound people, professional groundskeepers, and things like that. It is going to be such a wonderful thing. The video board and the sound system is going to be run by technical people who have that's what their job to keep those things up and running. It's going to be so nice. I cannot wait till next year.
I bet. And I got another question from somebody else that you will know probably pretty well, Abby Vinson.
Yeah, Abby. Good to have her back in Birmingham. She was with the
Yeah,
Big 12 for a while. She's back now.
yeah. At Abby L Vinson on Twitter, she asks, "How did you learn how to pronounce difficult names so well?"
Well, that's pronunciation guides, and like I said, that's as far as game day. That's my main preparation right there. I'll get with the media people for the other team, or coaches, or whoever I can get to go over and make sure that I'm getting those things pronounced right. One time, Coach Bartow had the Lithuanian national team come in for basketball one year, and you talk about a roster full of names. I had to scratch every one of them out and just put phonetic pronunciations on there so I could just say, because looking at them, I have no idea how to pronounce it. So we just have to spell them out that way, and you just work on them. Most team has two or three. That one had 12 of them, and so you just have to work at them and just to concentrate. The good thing is most times, once I give a player his full name one time for the opposing team, it's his last name from then on. So if they have a crazy first name, they get that one time and then I get that out of the way, and they're just the last name from then on out. So you just have to worry about that half of the name.
And my last question I've got on from my social media guys is from Ryan Keaty, a baseball great for UAB. He asks, or at rkeaty1121 on Twitter for those that want to give him a follow or check him out. He asks, I was a broadcast major myself. I love it or loved it. As a PA guy, did you come up with your catchphrases on your own or were they suggested by someone?
I don't have that many catchphrases. I don't think the biggest one, probably the Birmingham on your feet, is I think we started off with just Birmingham. Here come your UAB Blazers. And then Wayne Martin, who's a longtime sports writer in Birmingham, every time he would come into the press room, he worked with the Barons and with UAB. He would always say, "On your feet," just being Wayne Martin. So Dennis Rancott, who was the game manager back in the day, just kind of threw that out there one day, and we just kind of put that in there, and it stuck. It's always a lot of fun. You just get the folks started. A couple of other phrases, I guess the two hand slam, two hands. I got that from Tim Roy. He would do that. Uh, the one I like to throw in every now and then, but try not to wear it out, is the score and one more when we have an and one. And I stole that one from the guy who used to do the Atlanta Hawks broadcast, the PA over there when I went. So those are pretty much the only ones I can think of right now. I try not to get too carried away. I'm not much of a showboat. I try not to be. I don't think people come to the games to hear me. I like to throw something in there every now and then just to see if they're paying attention, but to just try to get the names right and not say anything unnecessary and just enjoy the game.
Well, I'll tell you, I love the football one. The Blazer fans, are you ready? Birmingham, are you ready? It's time for Blazer football. That one really gets me going at the football games and gets me. I feel like I'm about ready to run through a wall after I hear you.
Well, I can't take credit for that one. That one just showed up on the script. I think that's probably our marketing director, Erin Kraber. She, I don't know where she got it, but she's the one who puts the script together. So it came on there from her. So I'll have to give her credit on that one.
All right, sounds good. And my last question I got for you, it's a lighthearted question, a question I ask all my guests, and I'll just give you the one here. Here you go. If you had a time machine, what time period would you visit and why?
That's a crazy question. And I've always thought I've thought about this kind of before, and I think the one thing I'd like to go look at is watch them build the pyramids, because nobody's really for sure how they got that done. And Why not? That would be an interesting thing to see, just to see ancient Egypt, anyhow. And it'd be fun if maybe the aliens did have something to do with it. You never know. So let's go check that out and just see what's going on. What do you say?
Sounds good. All right. Well, Derek, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I really enjoyed it, and I know my listeners are going to enjoy getting to know a lot more about you. And it feels like we kind of already know you because we hear you so much at the games, and we love hearing that voice and getting us all riled up for the games. So thank you again for sharing your time with us, and look forward to hearing you more at the games.
Thank you, Will. Go Blazers.
Go Blazers!
All right. I want to thank Derek for sharing some of his stories with us. I know he has so many more that he could have shared with us, but to share all of them, it would have required the episode to be a few hours long. I know hearing his phrases gets me going just as much as it does for you guys. And I know we all appreciate him staying with our Blazers for all these years with the basketball program, football program since the club football days, and just so many more events in the Birmingham sports industry and media industry. So that's going to wrap things up for me. Be sure to check out my social media pages at Dragons Den EFEL on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and see how you can participate in my next Friday giveaway and get some awesome Blazer themed prize packs. Until next time, good night and go Blazers.